Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting season or session, I should say, of our LinkedIn Live series. Today, we're diving into how ESG compliance can evolve from a simple regulatory obligation into a powerful catalyst for innovation and a true competitive advantage. I'm Nineveh Zoudo. Everyone calls me Nin. I'm co-founder of Falcor Aid. We are an impact innovation firm dedicated to empowering visionary leaders who are ready to drive sustainable change. I am beyond thrilled to be here today with two incredible experts, my brilliant co-founder, Elena Lockwood, and the ever insightful Simone Schuppan, founder of C2 Impact. We are going to kick things off by introducing three regulations that are shaping the future of sustainability. Elena will kick us off by discussing the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, or the CSRD, and how companies can weave it into their overall business strategy, turning compliance into a strategic asset. I'll be exploring the California climate rules and how these regulations can drive data-driven decision-making and innovation. Simone will dive into the SEC climate disclosure rules and explain how these regulations translate into actionable steps within company operations, driving efficiency and excellence. Once we've set the stage for the regulations with these introductions, we'll dive into exploring how these regulations, far from being just boxes to tick, can actually help companies gain a competitive edge. We'll share insights on turning compliance data into strategic tools, optimizing operations, and driving sustainable growth. So kicking us off here, Elena, from a business strategy standpoint, how do you see companies integrating something like the CSRD into their strategies to not only meet compliance, but also position themselves as leaders in sustainability?
Thanks, Nin. First of all, CSRD stands for Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. It is a European Union regulation that expands on existing ESG or environmental, societal, and governance policies by bringing in a new principle called double materiality. This double materiality principle says that companies must report not only on how sustainability affects their own businesses, but also how their activities impact society and the environment. So in this sense, CSRD makes ESG reporting more rigorous, detailed, and mandatory for a broader range of companies, including non-EU companies that meets specific criteria. So what does this mean for American companies? It means that if your company has a subsidiary in the European Union with over 250 employees, a net turnover of over 40 million euros, a balance sheet total of over 20 million euros, or over 150 million euros in revenue, your company will be impacted or is being impacted by CSRD. Complying with CSRD will also matter to American companies and all non-EU companies meeting this criteria if they want to keep accessing the European market, do not want to pay significant non-compliance penalties and fees, need to meet investor and stakeholder expectations, and would like to hedge against reputational risks that can have negative consequences on customer expectations and branding. The changes CSRD will bring upon large companies worldwide is also significant because it will mandate companies to be more aware of their role in climate change, the use of natural resources, and ensuring fair working conditions that are aligned with basic human rights and diversity and inclusion practices. CSRD is also interesting because it turns companies into stewards of anti-corruption, bribery prevention, and transparency. At this point, If your company meets this criteria, you're probably already putting together or even implementing a reporting strategy. Most likely, the initial indicators of your status quo are not looking great, which is totally fine. We all have to start somewhere. If this is you, you might be asking, okay, so what can we actually do to comply with CSRD and improve? First, companies should conduct a deep assessment of their current ESG impact across company operations and identify the gap between their current state and future state. The next step is setting up a reporting strategy that includes data and technology required to demonstrate that you are compliant. And the last step is figuring out how to start improving. This represents a huge opportunity for chief sustainability officers and other sustainability leaders across the organization to cross-collaborate. And also to work together with other business units and use regulations and compliance as an excuse to innovate. I'll talk a little bit more about this later on. Back to you, Nin.
Thanks, Elena. Yeah, and thanks for introducing the CSRD. Well, now we're shifting our focus to introduce the California climate rules, which are setting a new precedent for climate action, and not just in California, but across any organization with significant operations in the state. These regulations require comprehensive data collection and detailed reporting on greenhouse gas emissions, on climate-related financial risks, and validated emissions reductions. A key component of these rules is the requirement to disclose Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions. Scope 1 and Scope 2 cover direct emissions from company-owned operations and indirect emissions from purchased energy. However, Scope 3 emissions, which include indirect emissions throughout the entire value chain, are also mandatory for companies that meet certain thresholds, such as those with $1 billion in revenue. This inclusion of Scope 3 is particularly significant, as it requires companies to take a comprehensive view of their environmental impact, encompassing everything from supply chain operations to the use of sold products. The power of these regulations lies in their data-driven approach. By mandating the collection and analysis of this comprehensive environmental data, the California climate rules empower companies to make informed strategic decisions. This data is not just about compliance, it's about unlocking new opportunities for innovation. For example, by analyzing emissions data, companies can identify areas for energy efficiency improvements or explore investments in renewable energy solutions. But it's not just about internal transformation. This data-driven approach fosters collaboration across industries, setting new standards that ripple out beyond individual companies. And today we'll delve into how organizations are leveraging the wealth of their data generated by these regulations to drive innovation, to enhance their competitive positioning, and to lead the charge towards a sustainable future. Together, we can shape a low-carbon economy that benefits not only businesses, but the broader economy as well. Over to you, Simone.
Thank you, Nin. So let's talk about the US as a whole. The SEC climate disclosure rules, which represent a major shift in how US companies will disclose climate-related risks and opportunities. Currently, this rule is on hold. It was released earlier this year at the beginning of the year, but then there's a lot of states that are challenging this rule currently. So there's no specific date on the calendar for when this will take effect. However, it's always good to know what may be coming. And there, as you will see, there's a lot more opportunities than restrictions in the future. So the SEC's rule require publicly traded companies to report on their greenhouse gas emissions, including direct emissions from Scope 1 and 2 that Nin just explained. Scope 3 emissions are only required if they are material to the business or if a company has made public commitments related to Scope 3 reductions. So this is a more flexible requirement compared to California's mandatory Scope 3 disclosures. What sets the SEC rules apart from regulations like the EU's CSRD that Elena covered earlier is the focus on investor protection and transparency. The SEC's primary goal is to ensure that investors have a clear, comparable information to assess long-term risks and opportunities related to climate change. Many companies in the US are pushing back on more government-imposed regulations. However, we strongly feel that the preparations for the SEC climate rule are pushing businesses to think more strategically about climate-related risks. It's not just about compliance. It's about using this information to drive smarter decision-making and ensure long-term resilience.
Thank you, Simone. And, now that we've introduced the 3 regulations, we'll be moving into the next part of the discussion today, where we'll dive deeper into this idea of leveraging compliance into a strategic driver for innovation. Elena will kick us off by exploring how companies can integrate something like the CSRD into their overall business strategy, and not just to tick the boxes, but to actually gain a competitive edge. We'll then translate these strategies into actionable steps within company operations, with Simone diving into how compliance can drive operational excellence and efficiency. And finally, I will be discussing how business intelligence plays a crucial role in turning the vast amounts of ESG data into strategic insights that can fuel innovation and growth. So, Elena, from a business strategy standpoint, how do you see companies weaving the CSRD into their business strategies, not only to meet compliance, but also positioning themselves as leaders in sustainability?
This is actually a great question, Nina. CSRD is so comprehensive that it really invites companies to rethink how sustainability is woven into their current business model, the ways in which they gain competitive advantage, and the strategy they formulate to get where they want to be. Let's put it this way. If companies are solely responsible for reporting on and making improvements on climate change, emissions, human rights across their supply chains, equal pay, diversity and inclusion, anti-corruption, transparency, etc., they are probably thinking that figuring out how to report some of these indicators and then trying to improve upon them will be extremely expensive. This is why companies need to start by taking a renewed look at their value proposition and their customer expectations. This is the first thing they need to do. Because this is going to inform if all indicators are equally important for their customers and for their businesses. They will also be able to answer where would it be less expensive to pay the penalties or non-compliant fees, or how can their businesses change in the long term to actually embrace new sustainability priorities. So to answer these questions and many others, companies should take a look at their business models and figure out how they can change without jeopardizing profitability. Could there actually be ways to change and increase profits? Could sustainability be a good excuse to innovate and explore new revenue streams, new ways of operating, new ways of engaging with your customers and show them that the company cares about what they care about, new sources of competitive advantage? A few strategies companies could explore are innovating their products and services to make them more sustainable. So one interesting innovation, just an example, is related to product as a service models. These types of models allow companies to minimize waste and material usage. One very simple example would be companies where you rent something. Instead of purchasing an actual product, So for example, think about renting your clothes, renting carpeting, even renting your Christmas tree. Now, to know exactly what makes sense for your company, for your business model to innovate on, you actually have to take a closer look at your operations.
I'm going to have to look into that Christmas tree thing. I actually did that last year where you can buy a live Christmas tree and then it gets picked up. But I need to see if it's elsewhere available too, not just in New York. Those are such great important points, Elena, that you just brought up. And from an operations perspective, aligning with sustainability goals can lead to really big operational innovations. When you're required to report on Scope 1, Scope 2 emissions under the SEC rules and other rules, it really pushes you to examine every aspect of your operations. So if you take energy consumption as an example, you can uncover inefficiencies that you may not have seen before because you actually have to look at the data. So if you're adopting technologies like IoT sensors for real-time monitoring, and then we'll get more into the data side, a business can track energy use more precisely and identify where energy is being wasted. So then that way, the technology isn't just helping with compliance, it allows operational improvements that reduce energy costs and emissions at the same time, which is a win-win for both the environment and the bottom line. So I came across an example of a manufacturing company installing real-time IoT sensors across their facilities, and they were optimizing energy use during off-peak hours. So really kind of going into when are you producing, when are your machines down? And they discovered that they reduced costs by 10%, which that's a pretty big deal. So just by really tracking their data, they were able to gain those insights, and they collected the data only for compliance reasons, and it actually turned into operational efficiency. And so if you're in California and you even have to report on Scope 3, that then requires you to dive deeper into your supply chain and possibly work with your suppliers and form closer relationships, which again will lead to more efficiencies because you're understanding more. You're not just taking it off of them. You really have to see how they are making the piece in your value chain that you're then taking over. You have to understand how they're making it in the first place, which can lead to lots of great new ideas and innovations in terms of the process or even the materials that are being used.
Thank you, Simone. And, that's where business intelligence plays such a crucial role. The data we gather for compliance, whether it's under the CSRD or the SEC rules or the California climate rules, isn't just static information. It's a goldmine for insights. By analyzing this data, we can identify trends, predict risks, and even uncover new business opportunities. For example, if the data shows that a significant portion of your carbon footprint comes from your supply chain, that might lead to a decision to source materials from more sustainable suppliers, or it could spark an innovation like developing a new, more sustainable material in-house. This data-driven approach allows CSOs to make strategic decisions that align with both compliance and innovation goals. And speaking from experience, having a robust system in place to handle and interpret this data, something we often help companies establish, makes all the difference in transforming compliance from a regulatory hurdle into a strategic advantage. Over to you, Elena.
Thanks, Dean. And this is where cross-collaboration becomes so vital. The insights that business intelligence provides aren't just useful for the sustainability team. They are essential for the entire organization. When the strategy, finance, legal, operations, and sustainability teams are all in sync, they can work together to innovate in ways that might not have been possible otherwise. For instance, a company might discover through compliance reporting that their customers are increasingly interested in the sustainability of their products. This insight could lead to a strategic pivot towards developing more sustainable products, which operations then bring to life through innovative manufacturing processes. And of course, it helps when there's a structured approach to integrating these insights across the different business units or departments, something that experienced partners can facilitate.
Absolutely. And I think it's a great point that you're bringing up to look in both directions of the value chain, from making the products and materials, and then also looking at what customers want, because one influences the other, right? Instead of just going in one direction from making it to then handing it off to the consumer or customer. So technology plays a really crucial role in making those changes happen. And companies are more and more adopting technologies, including AI, real-time data analytics, to track, well, emissions, which most companies just come back to as kind of their first point of what they're tackling, and then resource use. And while these technologies are necessary for compliance, as Elena alluded to, they also enable businesses to optimize their operations, reduce waste, drive efficiency, and come up with new products and ideas. So for example, with AI-powered data analytics, companies can automatically identify trends and inefficiencies in energy use versus somebody having to sit down and calculate in endless spreadsheets. New technologies allow for figuring out inefficiencies and allow to make real-time adjustments. You don't have to collect the data, write your report to be compliant, and then improve over the next year. You can actually do it right now. You just need to get set up in the first place, and then it allows you to make real-time adjustments, benefiting you directly on the go. So one example is a company used AI-driven insights to reduce energy waste across its entire supply chain and cutting emissions by 15% and reducing costs at a similar margin, because it turned out for them it went hand in hand. So additionally, in preparation for the California laws, companies are looking to automate their data collection for energy use, for renegotiating leases with their landlords for better energy tracking. So it kind of all expands. So again, like looking at how your usage of energy, materials, how it intersects with the different parts of your business. Businesses typically wouldn't have looked into renegotiating leases to be compliant on data tracking. So hey, now there's a point of where you can have a conversation and possibly get a better deal.
And, you know, that's the beauty of leveraging ESG compliance as a driver of innovation. You know, it's not just about meeting regulatory requirements, but you know, it's about using those requirements to drive broader changes that benefit the entire organization. By integrating data from various sources like emissions tracking, energy consumption, and supply chain metrics into a comprehensive dashboard, CSOs can provide a clear picture of where the company stands and where it can improve. The real-time visibility allows for agile decision-making, enabling companies to pivot quickly in response to any regulations or market demands. And sometimes having the right tools and support to build these dashboards, something that we often help companies with, can be the key to turning compliance into a strategic tool that empowers CSOs to lead with data.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Nin. And you know, as these dashboards evolve, they become more than just tools for compliance. They are strategic assets. Imagine being able to show your board or investors a real-time dashboard that not only tracks compliance, but also highlights how these efforts are driving revenue growth, cost savings, or risk reductions. That is a powerful narrative that elevates the role of the sustainability organization within the company. When we work with companies, we always emphasize the importance of having these strategic assets in place, because they don't just help with today's compliance. They set the stage for long-term innovation and growth.
So definitely, so this narrative is so crucial because it changes the perception of compliance from being a cost center to being a driver of value. When operation teams see the tangible benefits versus just being told you need to follow the rules, you need to fill out a spreadsheet, such as reduce costs from energy savings or increased efficiencies from using real-time data, they're really more likely to embrace those changes. So compliance becomes part of a broader cultural shift towards sustainability, and the data that operation teams collect for the different rules and regulations, they don't just help them to be compliant with the regulations, it also creates opportunities to streamline processes and so forth, and really build long-term resilience. So as we've been talking throughout, compliance actually fuels innovation and drives the business value versus being this big hurdle that needs to be overcome.
Yeah, that's well said, Simone. Yeah, exactly. And this cultural shift is what ultimately drives innovation. I mean, when everyone in the organization understands the value of compliance, not just as a regulatory requirement, but as a strategic opportunity, they're more likely to contribute ideas and solutions that further these goals. It's about creating a feedback loop where compliance data informs strategy, where strategy drives operations, and where operations feed back into business intelligence. And that's how you build a truly innovative, sustainable company. Over to you, Elena, on examples on Dell and Walmart.
Thanks, Lynn. Well, I think that the best part is that this isn't just theoretical. Companies are actually leveraging compliance today as an opportunity to innovate. We're seeing organizations that are leading the way in ESG compliance, not because they have to, but because they recognize the strategic value it brings. These companies are not just only meeting demands of regulators, but also exceeding the expectations of their customers, their investors, and their employees. One example is Walmart. Walmart turned its compliance with the SEC emissions reporting requirements into a catalyst for developing more sustainable packaging solutions. To meet its obligations for Scope 3 emissions, Scope 3 emissions are those generated in your supply chain. Walmart introduced a new initiative called Project Gigaton, which focuses on reducing plastic waste and optimizing packaging design. So through this Project Gigaton, Walmart has empowered suppliers to reduce a collective 1 billion metric tons of greenhouse emissions, which, well, this is the goal towards 2030, but they are well on track. This is driving industry-wide innovation in sustainable materials and product design. Another interesting example is Dell. Dell has been very proactive in aligning its operations with the European Union's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, CSRD, which mandates double materiality, as we discussed earlier on this session. So this double materiality mandate assessments and detailed disclosures on environmental and societal impact. So they'll use this regulatory pressure as an opportunity to refine its sustainability strategy, incorporating a more circular economy model, which is improving its governance processes and setting up cross-functional ESG councils to oversee compliance across the organization. These councils have empowered Dell to innovate by tracking over 600 issues in real time across multiple regulatory frameworks. As a result, Dell not only meets compliance standards, but also drives innovation in areas like supply chain emissions and ecosystem health.
These are such great examples, Elena. Those companies that get this right are the ones that will thrive in the long run. And you don't have to be one of the huge companies. You'll see these advantages of smaller companies as well. So those companies, I feel, will be the ones that will be able to adapt to not only new regulations, but capitalize on new opportunities and build resilience in the face of future challenges that we're all facing. And it all starts with viewing ESG compliance not as a burden, but as a platform for innovation.
Yeah, I agree, Simone. And yeah, again, wonderful examples, Elena. I mean, this really transitions into the fact that, to all the CSOs out there, the message feels pretty clear, to leverage your compliance efforts to drive innovation. Use the data you're already collecting to inform your strategy, to optimize your operations, and lead your company into a sustainable future. And keeping in mind that having the right tools, strategies, and partnerships in place can really turn compliance from a checkbox into a powerful engine for growth. And as you embark on this journey, we're excited to see how you'll weave these insights into action, not just meeting requirements, but elevating your entire industry. Keep us in the loop as you bring your innovations to life. Over to you, Elena.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks, Simone. And thanks, everyone, for joining us today. We hope you're leaving with new insights on how to turn ESG compliance into a pathway for innovation and growth. Be sure to check out our previous LinkedIn Live sessions on our YouTube channel and stay tuned for more resources. If you're interested in learning more about Valcorate or C2 Impact services, please reach out. We are at valcorate.com and c2impact.com.
Yes, thank you all. And I'm looking forward to seeing the incredible changes that across all the companies, across all company sizes and types. And as we continue this important conversation here and in person.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.